And then there was a charity race which used to take place at the Cheltenham Festival. So literally at Cheltenham, 4 days. And on the Thursday, the last race, it'd be a charity race for 12 people who'd signed up, raised money for Macmillan, and would race on a flat race on the last race of the day round the course.
Yeah.
And they'd be betting on it. The 65,000 people who'd been there for the day all stayed and watched it. And we sponsored a guy called Rishi Prasad, who's a TV broadcaster on ITV Racing.
Yeah,
right.
And Rishi rode in the race and he had a coral logo. And I went down to the paddock beforehand to be with him before he jumped on the horse. And he'd never really ridden before. So I was thinking, this is incredible. And then you realise, I looked around, saw all the people watching around the paddock. We watched the race, the stands were full. I thought, what other sport would an amateur get the chance to play football at the Wembley in front of a full crowd,
exactly,
or cricket at Lords in front of a full crowd? I said, this is insanely cool. And so then I suddenly so I then spoke to him and said, if I committed to learning to ride, would I be accepted as one of the for next year's race? So I applied and they accepted me because in many ways, because I had the PR profile, and they knew I'd be able to write blogs in the Racing Post and
drive interest from the guy.
for sure. And so then I had to learn to ride. I was remember going. I never went football training at Cashel ever. I mean, ever in 20 years. But I went football training that September before, and Charlie Sinclair, our old mucker, was taking training, and so that was my first effort to
drive us into the ground. Yeah.
No, I thought I might have to do a bit more than this.
I actually there's a photograph that you're in the TalkSport box and you was getting your six pack out, Simon. If I remember rightly, you was next to Ray Parler, Alan Brazil, and you were giving it a little bit of the old showing.
So I actually and I've never been very good at sticking to that kind of regime. Really, but because I had a goal, I actually gave up drinking. First time I've ever done that. Started riding a hell of a lot, just learning to ride. I literally started with like holding the reins, then sort of trotting.
It's nerve-wracking, isn't it? When you're first on
But then I did I had to lose a lot of weight and build core strength. So I actually, Ryan Moore, the jockey, and his brothers Jamie and Josh and Hayley Moore, they all were using this thing called Insanity. The Insanity. Was it Sean T? Sean T, the 60-day challenge, the DVDs.
So hard.
And because they said the great thing is they can just pop it on the TV, even if they're in a hotel like in Japan or somewhere riding, and they can do this workout, which builds core strength. So I got that, and I've still got it now. I still whop it on every now and then. It's really good. It really is. And so I got really fit and sort of, I wouldn't say ripped, but I had some form of...
You were all right.
Top was coming off more often.
There was a bit of definition. And then, and actually, again, it was the best thing I ever did in my life. This is probably the thing I was proudest of because even within racing, I'd worked in 20 years, and so I was well known amongst punters and stuff, but there were still loads of trainers and jockeys who would still look at me and just think I'm just some bookie chap, And so once I started doing this, I suddenly got requests from trainers that I didn't really know saying, why don't you come down and ride out at my stables? And they all thought what I was doing was amazing. And so I would turn up at Charlie Longsdon's and Tim Vaughan's and Oliver Sherwood's and all these different trainers and just go and ride out, and they'd lob me on a horse. They'd always make sense, put you on a sensible horse, not a lunatic. Yeah. And I would then, and I'd almost, ride out. And loads of memories of riding with other jockeys. I went to Kempton Park and rode round the actual race course for.
And it's all this over the course of a year. Like, is this like from that Cheltenham to the following?
I first sat on a horse at the end of September, so say 1st of October. And I rode in the race in March. So it was 6 months. So January and February, when I was going, I'd learned how to ride enough. And all I had to do was basically have balance, be able to ride, quick, not fall off, and so I didn't have great technical skills. I wouldn't win a dressage competition or anything, but I could definitely,
get from A to B.
And so, yes, I had loads of fun and met, rode around Kempton with Richard Johnson and Tom Cannon and Alan Johns and sort of the professional jockeys. And then eventually rode in the race. And that's
how did we get on?
Well, and the other thing I'd say is like my daughter, that was an example where my daughter was incredibly proud because she was riding, suddenly seeing her dad riding.
Yeah, fantastic.
And they both got the day of school, came down to Cheltenham, and on the day I was so gaunt. There are photos of me because it was like, you think of people like AP McCoy, like I got down to 11 stone 2. I'm now like 14 stone, but I was really tight because I had to ride at 12 stone, and the race before our race was an amateur riders race, and some person had fallen off the top of the hill, and they actually, what a dangerous sport it is. They had an air ambulance to come to. So of course, but it meant that it's getting dark, it's getting with delay, tension. Yeah, you can imagine. And actually, Martin Pipe and Peter Scudamore, very famous trainer and jockey combination, who were my heroes when I was first fell in love with racing in the late 80s. They came up to me. I got to know. They came up to me during the day and said, Simon, he goes, there's one thing you've got to remember in your race. He said, for God's sake, don't miss the start. Be ready at the start. It can all happen so quickly when the tapes go up and stuff. So, right, okay. And so, of course, there I am at the start. There's 60,000 people like making noise. There's the wind's blowing. It's getting dark. There's horses. There's all the other jockeys wandering around, sort of getting ready. And I was literally, genuinely froze. Tapes go up. And then suddenly I was sort of trying to kick my horse, but actually kind of so nervous I'm hanging onto the reins. Eventually, bless him, the horse shoots up and I'd give away 3 or 4 lengths, and I was on words. And actually, all I remember was thinking, funny, I got very brave very quickly and think, sod this is embarrassing, I'm going to go for it. And the horse just fired through and went, I remember going, it was like a computer game, there were a couple of horses galloping along, and my horse just went straight through this narrow gap. And instead of when normally I might have said, well, be careful there, I just went, he went charging through, And then
horse literally takes the lead.
Just to get, and I just thought, sorry, I've got to get, but I still can remember going all the way up the top of the hill at Cheltenham and coming sailing down and then up the straight. And at that point, I remember just thinking, like, try and push, try and look like Frankie Dettori.
Did you have your eyes shut?
You had your photo opportunity in mind there, didn't it?
I don't think it was the prettiest Frankie Dettori impression, but I actually passed a horse just for the post to finish 5th, and it was 12 runners. So I always say, I finished 5th. So I beat 6th. I beat 6, was beaten by 5. So I was 6th of 12. That's right. And
fair play to you,
and
mate.
then you come down the horse walk, and you come down the horse walk. It's a very famous horse walk with the stands to your left, and obviously the winners would all stand up. And we had a box of people at the top. I could hear them all cheering for me, and I sort of stood up in my stirrups and waved my whip.
Flying dismount, was there?
I didn't do a flying dismount.
That's where the Frankie Dettori
the story ended. But my daughter Eloise came up to me in the box. She goes, Dad, when you came past me up the run, and she goes, I was so proud I nearly cried.
Oh, that's